Hey guys, welcome back. Let's take a look at some big, epic fight matchups that had the makings to be fights of the year, but they all ended really quickly due to an unfortunate, unforeseen fight-ending injury. These were some great matchups on paper, and some even had some great trash talking beforehand, but it was just not meant to be. Let's get started, but first, as always, make sure to like the video and subscribe as it really helps me out. In 2006, Mauricio Rua and Mark Coleman were set to face off at Pride 31 in Japan. Rua was coming up in weight, making his debut at heavyweight after 8 straight wins at middleweight. The fight ended after only 49 seconds, after Coleman got a single leg takedown and Rua landed awkwardly on his arm. Rua ended up dislocating his elbow, but was only out for about 6 months and returned to the middleweight division. After the injury, Coleman continued the attack as he didn't even realize that Rua got injured until the referee stepped in and stopped the fight. A small scuffle ensued between the teams, but settled down quickly. They rematched 3 years later, and Rua was able to get revenge via TKO.
30 seconds remains in the fight. Coleman rocked.
Yair Rodriguez was once again a part of a fight that ended prematurely after his fight against Brian Ortega at the end of the first round. This time though, he actually had a submission attempt that looked close to being in place, but Ortega was able to get out.
Little throw by. But even though Yair's throwing up his legs, this is great.
Ortega seemed to be able to get out and had his hand tight, so he never got the full extension, but just by pulling back, his shoulder got dislocated and the fight was stopped immediately.
Brian wants to grab. Oh,
What happened?
His shoulder popped out. His shoulder popped out.
Rodriguez did a great job not to keep hitting Ortega as he was on the ground in visible pain, but the victory was very much questioned, as many thought it should have been ruled a no contest. I don't have a record of who these fighters are, but the injury was absolutely brutal. Think of the Anderson Silva injury as they both threw the same kick. One of the fighters just had a much stronger bone and absolutely demolished this poor guy's leg, making it wobble like a freaking booger that is dripping out of your nose. The winning fighter's face of absolute shock to see that foot hanging off is probably just traumatizing. One of the quickest ending in all fights on this list is the fight that took place in London after only 16 seconds, where Tom Aspinall was competing in his native country, just like Rodriguez, but this time it was him who suffered the freak injury.
Oh, his knee's gone. Wow. His knee's gone. Oh, such a...
Aspinall was coming off 5 straight victories via stoppage, moving up quickly to challenge the top fighters, and was getting close to getting a title shot, but this injury has made his road a whole lot harder. Max Holloway was in the middle of his dominant run, while Charles Oliveira was still trying to find himself, as he was very inconsistent in this part of his career, having 8 losses in 17 fights. Holloway was able to put him away in less than 2 minutes with a very rare injury.
Not gonna mess around on
Oliveira suffered a micro tear in his esophagus that is already strange, but also led Oliveira to being paralyzed for 4 hours on his left side. He was unable to move, and he was seriously worried that it would be the end of his career. Luckily for us, he came back stronger than ever and had a dominating streak in the last couple of years. Vitor Belfort and Randy Couture fought each other 3 times in MMA, with the first being a TKO victory by Randy Couture. But then, in the second fight, 7 years later, the fight ended in only 49 seconds.
It's like you got a finger in the eye.
In a rare injury, somehow a seam from Vitor's glove cut Couture's eye, leaving him with a corneal abrasion that led to the fight being stopped. The cut actually came when Vitor threw a left hook that grazed his eye. Unable to continue, the fight ended in less than a minute. They did have a rubber match, and Couture dominated the fight and won via a doctor's stoppage due to a cut.
You know, the old ad is excessive right now.
Aoki Shinya actually won this fight via submission officially with a standing arm lock, but it was all because he broke Keith Wisniewski's arm. Keith didn't even have a chance to tap or try to avoid the move. That's how fast it was. But with his arm broken, the referee immediately noticed and stepped in to stop the fight before Shinya could land any further punishment on a defenseless Wisniewski. The fight ended in just 2 minutes. Chris Weidman had his first fight with Royal Hall back in 2010, and it was only his 3rd fight in MMA, and he finished him with a TKO in just the first round. It took 11 years for these two to meet once again, with both of them being seasoned veterans, and Weidman beating the legendary Silva by breaking his leg in dramatic fashion. Well, sometimes things just seem to come back around.
Right below. Just tell me.
Weidman suffered the same injury that he caused Anderson Silva, and it happened in only 17 seconds into the fight. Of course, the fight was immediately stopped, and Weidman to this day is still in recovery from this brutal injury. Yair Rodriguez in 2019 was given the opportunity to headline a UFC event for the first time, and it would be held in his home country of Mexico. He was extremely excited, and his opponent was Jeremy Stephens. The fight was expected to be really exciting, with both fighters being pretty aggressive and creative, but it all ended in only 15 seconds after Rodriguez accidentally poked Stephens' eye. The poke looked really bad, and Stephens was unable to open his eye, even with the referee trying to pry it open for him. It just wouldn't budge. Stephens looked disappointed, and Rodriguez was furious, even getting into an altercation with the officials. After being given 5 minutes for Stephens to recover, he still couldn't open his eye, and Herb Dean was forced to call off the fight, declaring it a no contest as the eye poke was not intentional. Crowd was furious, throwing stuff into the octagon and yelling at Stephens. It wasn't his fault, but the crowd was on Rodriguez's side, so they took this as Stephens being a coward. They rematched later, and Rodriguez was able to show that he was actually the better man.
Jeremy landed right on the hole.
Lifted his leg.
It's hard to read which one he's throwing, and that's what makes it.
The fights that end because of an eye poke are the worst, since no one is actually wanting to do that, and both fighters end up feeling guilty, and they both get judged. One for not wanting to fight through the injury, and the other for being a bit of a cheat. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you next time.